Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The New Normal with Lee and Chantelle. What's
Hello,
going on, Lee?
hello everybody.
Hello.
The UFC 271 just ended.
Hmm.
Let's briefly talk about the co-main and main event. So the co-main was Derek Lewis versus Taito Ibasa. What do you think about that fight?
I didn't even know Lewis. I usually don't like to watch these. What are they, heavyweight?
Yeah.
Yeah, they look like heavyweight, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't usually like to watch.
Don't
Like, no
fight him.
discrimination. Like, okay, so like no, I like them thicker, you know, people, friends, But in this case, in terms of fighting, like I talked about this in the Cyril and what's his name now?
Francis.
Yeah, Francis Ngannou. So I talked about this before. I usually don't like watching the heavyweights because and that's an actual class, by the way. Heavyweight class, it's not being mean. It's like heavyweight. They're called heavyweight. Okay. So like I usually don't like watching them. Why are you laughing?
It's like what's it called? They came out with a clothing brand that's for plus size model or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're just called heavy. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
I usually don't like watching them because they're not as graceful, like little it is what the title says, okay, heavyweight. And so like there's not much movement. It's not as dynamic as watching like lightweight.
Like Israel Adesanya.
Yeah. Well, they're called welterweights, right?
Okay, no.
And so anyways, I thought about the co-main fight as like actually really eventful because of the elbow that Ty gave. And like I was not expecting that at all. Like, who knew this heavyweight had some sort of reflex that had something to do with his elbow hitting the ceiling type of thing, I wasn't expecting that at all. And on top of that, to get a knockout from an elbow. Like, what? Like, I never from the time I've watched UFC, I've never seen that before, so I thought that was quite eventful. The main event, are we talking about the main event?
No, I'll just mention real quick. It's pretty interesting that they have a similar backstory. Like Derek Lewis was he went to jail and he
Oh,
came,
shoot.
yeah, when he was way younger, and he came out and he didn't have much options, so he started MMA. And then he didn't take it seriously, but just relying on his power, he was winning fights. But then every time he encountered a tough opponent, he loses. So then he had to like reinvent himself, and then he improved a lot, and he almost got a title shot. And then the other guy, Taito Iwasa, has a similar story where he came in, he didn't take it seriously, and then he was winning just based on talent. And
Yeah.
then later on, um, every time he encountered tough competition, he loses. So now he going back and looking at everything and trying to improve his skills. And he's sort of like the younger version of Derek Lewis. And now he's coming up and he improved a lot and he knocked him out, which is pretty crazy because Derek Lewis has the most knockouts in all of the UFC fighters. So he's like the king of knockouts, and he got knocked out by him.
Yeah. Which was sad to watch
Which is
because
sad.
like I was counting on Derek to like actually deliver.
And it's in his hometown.
Houston.
Yeah, he's from Houston. And he was fighting in Houston, and he got knocked out.
Yeah. It's kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. And I think that it makes sense for a new and upcoming person to take that spot and to really study his opponent. So I don't know, it's interesting to watch from that point of view.
Yeah. So main event, Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whitaker. What do you think
Main
about that?
event. Oh man. Well, like, so they fought before. This is their second time fighting. And like, what can we really expect from Israel Adesanya? Like, I think he's like top of the top right now in his class. Like, he's just a master at technicality, I feel like. And he's just super interesting to watch. He's like so dynamic. He's so accurate. Like, I don't know. I have no bad things to say. Whitaker is also really good. Like, if Whitaker was fighting someone else, I would probably be on Whitaker's
There's
side.
a there's a little controversy on who won because on the scorecard Israel Adesanya won, but some people saying maybe Whitaker should have won. What do you think?
What are people saying? Actually, didn't look into the aftermath of.
No, but just like based on the fight, who do you think should have won?
I think it should be Adesanya. Like Whitaker did have some takedowns, sure, but like he didn't really do anything with the takedowns. This is something
Yeah.
similar with I can't remember whose fight that was now. Was it
He didn't have jiu-jitsu.
yeah, there was like nothing there. Like sure, you took someone down, but like what did you do? You did nothing with it. Like there's no capitalizing on anything. Like I mean at one point he almost had a near naked choke, like maybe, but at the same time, like defensively, Adesanya did extremely well. Like I was even surprised he was like getting out of some of the positions he was in, and he was smart, like walking from the center of the cage to the like to the side of the cage to get Whitaker off him. Like he gave up his back so many times, and Whitaker did not capitalize on any of those positions. Like maybe once.
Based on your white belt expert experience,
Okay, chill.
you should, you should.
I really enjoy watching UFC, okay?
Okay, yeah.
If you can't tell already.
Maybe then with that, maybe we'll transition to how did you get into UFC? Why do you enjoy
No,
watching
not
UFC?
yet. We have
What?
to, I need to get your opinion on it because you're picking my brain about the co-main and main events. So
Yeah, what do you want to know? Not
what
much
do you
happened.
think? Do your thoughts differ from mine, or am I just like so on point or what? Like
You're very on point.
really? Yeah.
Well, there's like many different school of thoughts in fighting. So it's like not really right or wrong, you know. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm in the camp that if you take someone down and you don't get anything out of it, the takedown means nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So we're on the same page.
So yeah, so I agree with you, but um, at the same time, it's like if two people, let's say two people fought and nothing happened besides the takedown, right? If it's just nobody hit each other and one person take the other person down, would you give the win to that person because okay, now you have extra?
No?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then if there are two people, there's nothing else but one takedown. Person A takes B down, and that still is 0-0 to you.
Yeah, if the person A didn't do anything. That's why I want to give Adesanya freaking extra points because of his defense. His defense is so crazy. Like I can't get over it.
But it's like, but your objective in wrestling is to take the other person down. So if you take the other person down, it's still effective grappling, right? So it counts for something. It's like I don't think you should just automatically win the fight because you keep taking the other person down.
That's what I'm saying.
But yeah, how much should they count? I don't know.
How much damage did it do? Nothing.
Yeah.
Like you could even just jab the whole time and do some damage over freaking taking a takedown, making a takedown, and then like, okay, what?
Yeah. And also
Scratch on the cage occasionally, like what? Like I hate to say this. I freaking hate to say this because I freaking dislike Usman and his freaking toe stomping. But like I think toe stomping actually does something more than freaking like empty takedown. Like not to take anything away from Whitaker. I think he did a great job of trying to attempt that, but like follow through. Like in basketball, you gotta follow through, you gotta where's that follow through? Like son.
if if
His
you
rear
had
naked choke did not follow through neither. Like
if you had a belt system in basketball, what belt would you be? Still white belt, white belt in
no, at least
basketball?
that would be some sort of like green belt. You know what I'm saying? Like, is there
Oh,
such thing as green belt?
no, not really. But
Yo, then I'm a green belt.
okay, let's just move on. You sound mad ignorant right now.
No, I would say I'm purple belt at least
Whoa.
in basketball. Okay, in basketball. Just
So
saying. Like I played freaking clinics and like
so if
camps with boys. Okay, I was the
so
only girl.
okay, so if I beat you in basketball, I will be black belt in basketball then?
No, there's no. You have no form.
Yeah,
Kidding, like I mean, you get to get the ball in, but you got no form. Like I don't know. Half of it is about the form. You can't just chuck it up there.
no, yeah. A knockout is a knockout. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you knock the other person out. It doesn't matter if it doesn't look good knocking the other person out. Okay, knockout's a knockout.
Sure.
But anyways, so how did you get into UFC? How did a girl like you got into such a violent sport like this?
Yeah, see, I did not start out that way, okay? Like, what can I think of this? Like 8 years ago, my ex, like he like brought me to watch UFC one time when we were gonna eat burgers or whatever. I think it was like McGregor's height or like GSP's like last fight even. I can't remember. And yeah, so we watched UFC a few times and really didn't like UFC. I mean, like, oh yeah, like I watched it, great, hurrah. But like at the end of the day, I really didn't care. I thought it was like a bunch of men, like old men, trying to fight and get all bloody for no reason. And then like I just thought that like friggin' wannabe girls trying to be fighters want to like try to beat up some other one. Like I don't know. I just didn't think
What
too
do you
much of
think
it
about the
or
ring
too
girls?
highly of it. What's that?
What do you think about the ring girls then?
Yeah, like I thought back then, I thought the ring girls were like the shit to look at. But then, okay, this is gonna change into a different story. But like
It's
when
okay.
I met you, okay, like we talked about UFC, you talked about jiu-jitsu, and then um one thing that really stood out to me with you was how you described the fighters. So, like, you thought really highly of the fighters and even the girl fighters, you know? So, like, I was like, oh, but what about the ring girls? Because, like, that's all like my ex and like whoever like all them guys ever talked about was the ring girls. And even on social media, I don't really see people rave about freaking Amanda Nunes and like, you know, Shevchenko. So then I was like, okay, like, what do you think about the ring girls? And you're like, what? You're like, there's two types of men in life. And then you're like, one who like cares about the fighter, and then the other one who cares about the ring girl who is freaking useless. And you're like, I go with the girl in the ring who's the fighter because she can do this, this, and this, and this. And you're like, what does a ring girl do? And I was so like, I was even offended. I didn't even care about the ring girls back then, but like I was offended. I was like, oh shit, like I'd be looking at these ring girls walking around with their like tight, small bodies, but like not really. And then like I look at the fighters as if the fighters were too manly or whatever. But then now, from your perspective, it's like, holy, like I respect this guy so much. And we weren't even like together back then. Like you saying that changed my whole perspective on guys because it's true. Like There are two types of guys. Like one who cares about the dumbasses. Like no offense, okay, ring girls, like your models, you do your thing,
Salami.
you model around the ring. You do that, okay? But like you can't fight like the fighters, okay? You don't got no technicality like that. Like, I'm sorry, but like, no, I think a fighter is just superior over any ring girl now. So sorry, Ariane Celeste and freaking Brittany Palmer. I changed my mind on you guys. I fucking swear there's gonna someday this podcast gonna blow up and someone's gonna be like, yo, Chantelle was hating on Brittany Palmer and Ariane Celeste.
Yeah.
Also, those girls are old. I didn't realize how old they were. Like they look really good for their age, but like I don't know how much work you had to do to get that done. Wow. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
Also, another thing was that you introduced me to jiu-jitsu, and so you kind of brought me again to jiu-jitsu class. And like you went out of your way, we weren't even together again. You went out of your way to bring me to a club of my choosing. And this is not like, this is far, okay? Like,
No, it's not. No, it's
okay,
not.
well, like relative to like what I'm used to, other people would say it's far. Again, it's perspective. Like other people would say it's far, okay, just to have dinner in this particular place of town. Anyways, so you brought me there. I was freaking scared. Had my first jiu-jitsu class. I did not have a gi. Like all the excuses that I was making was not even an excuse to you. And you brought me there. I went. Like you even tried to go to the club too. And like,
So, but before you went to the jiu-jitsu class, you know nothing about fighting.
not really. No, because then
You don't know
all I
what,
ever was close to was Taekwondo. That's all I ever did.
but when you heard jiu-jitsu, were you like, what was that? Why does it pronounce like that?
No, I had some sort of idea with combat sports. I mean, like yeah, I had some sort of idea. I wasn't just completely ignorant about it, but
You've been in fights on the playground?
no, I think that I was like, because I did Taekwondo before, I'm like, okay, like I know this line of like wardrobe, wearing people. So I did like, it wasn't a gi back then. I didn't think that's the name because in Taekwondo it's a little bit different. But yeah, I know I had some sort of idea. I knew it was like on the ground fighting. So that's what I didn't like about jiu-jitsu is like people touching each other and just getting into like awkward positions with anyone, guy or girl, like it doesn't matter. So yeah, no, I didn't know too much, but I knew what it was about. And that's why I was like so disgusted by it because like you're just touching every like you don't know the person. Like, yeah, it's just a whole thing. No.
Okay. And then you took
So
a class to change your mind?
yeah. Okay, so like let me tell you about my first
Oh,
experience.
here we
Okay.
go.
This is the first, okay?
Okay.
So like firstly, backstory, I grew up with boys. Okay, like most of my cousins are guys. I have a brother. Like I like generally hang out with guys. Like I'm a little tomboy, like growing up a little bit. Anyways, not that I didn't have friends that were girls, but like I was just like I would hang out with guys more because it's less drama. Okay, we'll just get into that next time. But so I would like get in fights with my cousins and like especially my brother. So like I didn't mind fighting like guys. And so like when I went to the club, is it called the club? It's called the club, right?
I don't know, gym,
Okay,
club.
gym.
I don't know.
So like when I get in there, I'm like, oh great, like there's all types of ages here. There's all girls and guys here. And then in the class, I didn't even have a gi, which is what you wear, like it's like a white robe type thing. I didn't have any of that, so they gave it to me to like rent out for like my first class. And so I had to just roll with other people, and roll and grapple is like what you do. So like I don't know how to explain roll or grapple, but you like do the moves. This sounds so wrong though, like not having context. Like you kind of look up jujitsu first, get an idea, then come back.
You're
And
just
like so
like
I
a
had to
wrestle
yeah,
on
I
the
had to
ground.
wrestle.
And try to
with
submit the other person.
yes. So we had like a round of trying to wrestle and like do some exercises with all and anyone. Like it doesn't matter if they were old. Like there was a kid in my class and he was more advanced, so like he like you just had to do your best to submit them. And it was a kind of like a beginner like introductory to jiu-jitsu, because that's normally not what your first class would be like. And they said that in the beginning, like normally we wouldn't be doing submissions and things like that. And submission is where you would like choke someone out or like, you know, put them in a triangle like with your legs or whatever. Anyways, so I was just like, I'm just gonna have to go with this. Like everyone's doing it, everyone's so professional, no one's like being like, oh, I'm not the guy, or like, oh, I don't want this girl, like whatever. So I just do it. And then the first time this girl is like rough too, like she was going all out, you know. First time she submitted me, she put me in a choke. I was like, oh, I like this. Like it's so twisted, but I like being submitted. So then I was like, yo,
You're
what is this?
you're a submissive girl.
No, it's like messed up too. Like, ew, like I just got submitted and I like it. Like that's kind of messed up. Like kind of fucked up, you know? So then I told the
Actually,
instructor, I was like, oh, like, and they're like, oh, you feel that? Like, can you feel your arteries like stopping, like the blood not rushing to your head type thing? Like you're losing the blood.
can you see your life leaving your body?
Like literally. And like, so I was like, yeah. And they're like, that's how it should feel like when you submit someone else. And I'm like, oh shit, like I know what it feels like when I do that to the other person. So like it was so twisted. And they're like, see, what you felt there was the jiu-jitsu bug. Now you're gonna come back over and over again just so that you can get that feeling again. I'm like, that's so true. And then I went to a few more classes, no problem. Like I wasn't like picky or anything, going back to the class and like rolling with other people and other guys. Like some of my guys were like way older. And then but then freaking COVID hit, and then that's the end of it. And I'm just like, okay, great. So that was my little taste of jiu-jitsu. So I'm like not even hardly a white belt, but it was so fun. Like, yeah, I want to learn more.
But then how did they translate into
Watching
liking?
UFC.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So like I didn't know the terms back then, like mount, full guard, half guard. I didn't know any of that stuff. And then in the introductory class, like we kind of learned the different positions, why you're doing like this move, like how you would get uh, your body to manipulate itself to get into another move, to get into position to submit them. So I didn't know any of that. And I learned the technicalities, the problem solving skills that is needed to submit someone. And I think that problem solving and the technicality part and the skills part is kind of like chess. You figure it out. I think that is so cool. And like not one way is wrong either. If you come up with a move that is like super creative but then gets you to the point when you can submit someone, like that is pure creativity and an art. So like I really respect people who like think outside of the box in terms of like UFC, knowing their body, knowing how it translates over time, and like, you know, so it's also like getting to know yourself too. Like it's such a deep way of getting to know yourself and how you move, because normally that's not what you do. Like normally in real life you don't wrestle with someone until you get something right, you know. So yeah, it's really cool.
But it's a natural transition where you already knew what UFC was. So now just Jiu-Jitsu connects the dots and then you just start watching UFC.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
so.
and then did you watch it because it's entertaining, or did you watch it for research purposes? You're like, oh, I want to see how this person submits that person.
Yeah, I think I watched it
And
more
and,
for.
and who was your first, like favorite fighter? Who was like did you get hooked right away? You don't care which fighter is fighting, or did you watch until one day you ran into someone who's interesting and then you're like, oh, now I'm hooked?
Again, a lot of influence from you. You started showing me, okay, this is like all about, okay, whatever. You showed me this world, okay? But like from a nerd point of view, not that you're a nerd, but like someone who really knows UFC, even those up and new coming fighters that no one knows about. I think like from my very first like favorite is Habib Nurmagomedov. Like just the way that he moves, just learning his background, just knowing him as a person. Um, like he was my like absolute favorite. And then came like Adesanya, and then came Gaethje, and then came Whitaker. You know, like all everyone after.
Is it
So
because the way Habib fights, or is it more of how he does interviews?
both, like both, like, and that's why I said this before too. Like you and Habib back then was like very similar because you both are hardcore. You know, like very to the word, very literal and everything. And then that's what drew me to him too, was
That's how
because
real men are.
okay, like yes, this is true too. Cariño.
Uh, well,
So like that was like my first main like fighter that I really really liked, and then I didn't even look at watching the girl fighters, but then after learning about Shevchenko and like Shevchenko like no, I'm just joking, it's Weili, Zhang Weili, then I'm just like then I really like got into watching also the girls fighting. So, but like my number one girl fighter first was Zhang Weili, and then I learned about Shevchenko, and I was like, oh, great! Like, I also like Shevchenko, and then I also like what's her name now, the Brazilian one who has a bubbly personality. I forgot. Rebus
Amanda Hiba or something.
Hiba, is that how you say?
I don't know.
Yeah, Amanda, like however you say her last name, Hiba Riba. I don't know. Um, yeah. So
When you watch UFC, what do you get out of it? Like, is it excitement or what? Is it
it's a rush.
entertaining? Like what? Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Do
Yeah,
you
I
do
think
you
it's
watch
like
any other sports?
yeah, I watch like boxing when it was Pacquiao fighting before and like Mayweather, but like other sports like I really watch. I used to really watch tennis.
Like, is the UFC? Does the UFC give you a complete different feeling than any other sport when you're watching other
Yeah,
sports? Or is it
like
like
it's so much more
similar? Like you
intense.
get a rush watching basketball, you get a rush watching, football, you get watch. You're just like, is this one of the sports you like, or this is like a league above everything else?
This is kind of a league above everything else for the reason again you gave. Sorry, I'm just so influenced by you all in a good way. So I'm so glad that it's you that I'm getting influence from. This
This
is
is
like
all of
all
our listeners are cringing right now.
okay, well, I don't know. There's nobody else that like taught me the way you taught me. And if I learned this from someone else, they're really not good at explaining anything. So I'm just throwing it out there, whoever is listening. Not to mention anyone. I'm just not going to mention anyone. What was the question?
Okay, so do you think it came from just the nature of UFC because fighting is so like
Yeah, okay. I knew where I
primitive,
was going with that.
or do you think UFC does a better job than any other sport to tell the backstories of the fighters that makes you like relate?
Okay, so both. So firstly, it's because like, yeah, sure, their background, because there's but like also like it's anyone with all walks of life. Like there's someone who started like literally from the street. There's someone who started because they started when they were really young and they've been doing this kind of sport for so long. Like, and then there's someone who like from anything, anywhere. So
The there's sometimes when you watch it, you feel like this is too violent. This is not supposed to happen. Like, do you get the
yeah, from the beginning, I never liked the violence part of it. But like how you explained it, is like anyone can be a fighter and they have their different like weight classes too, so there's like no one's discriminated. There's like it's super international. Like you can be from anywhere literally across the world, and you could have a chance to be a fighter. And it's all like it's all fist fighting, so you don't have any other skill than your body and your mind. And so before I was like, oh, like some people are taller than others or like bigger than others. And then with the weight classes, that kind of like diminishes all of that. So I'm like, oh, that's true. Like there's nothing else that could differentiate one from the other, you know?
Because I've learned boxing since I was pretty young. So I never look at it in a violent way. So when people
Mm,
say, "Oh, I don't feel comfortable watching, it's too violent," I like sort of like logically I know what they're saying, but then like in experience wise, I couldn't relate.
yeah.
You know?
And I used to be like that too, but like I said, I watched boxing growing up. So I didn't like think too much of it. I just didn't think like boxing is not as bloody to me as UFC is, because it's not as free form. Like boxing, you're boxing. Like UFC, you're doing it's free form. It's mixed martial arts. You could do anything,
Mm.
almost anything.
So UFC is now your favorite sport.
One of my favorite sports.
Well, what do you think makes UFC so good? Do you think other sports can like learn from UFC and become to
No,
the same level?
no. UFC is a different on a different level because of how raw it is. Like even from a literal sense, like all the blood that comes with it, all the sweat, the tears, it's too real. Like um
Do you
it's
think
like
do you
yeah.
think one day UFC can be a universal sport that everybody enjoys, like I don't know, basketball back in the day, or maybe even boxing? I think back in the day when Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson was boxing, everyone around the world watched it. Everybody like connected. But
Mm,
do you think UFC, no matter how big it gets, you will always be limited within like a group of people who are okay with raw and violent
yeah, exactly.
like this?
Yeah, no, I think I'm leaning towards like it's quite a niche type of person that likes this kind of, combat sport type thing. It's similar in the way that not everyone can be nurses and doctors because of the blood aspect. Like there's just some people who can't handle
Speak
that
for
stuff.
yourself.
Can you like I've
What?
only ever said good things about you putting me on blast. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I can't take blood like that. Like from a needle, like please no. But like if it's like fighting and it's naturally like bloody, like I can handle that.
Hmm.
So I think it's just like one of those things that is kind of like quite sensitive still to people who are watching. And not only that, but like kids, it's tough for kids to watch all the bloody stuff too. Like it's too violent in a way. Like you just have to be a certain age, or kids want to be a certain age maybe to start watching this stuff. Whereas like basketball, anyone can watch basketball any age. And like tennis, any age can watch like you know what I mean? Like it's definitely like combat sports in general, or even like UFC is not a gentleman's sport. Whereas like tennis is a gentleman's sport. um
UFC is a very gentleman sport. What do
Well,
you
what kind of gentleman are you talking about?
Well, because in fighting, they let off their aggression in the cage. You hear this from many people. Fighters are the nicest people you meet, and
Yeah,
they don't have ego because they literally get killed in the gym multiple times, and they don't hold themselves higher than anybody else. They're like, I could have died 3 times when that guy choked me out, like
yeah.
and, and they left, and they live a healthy lifestyle, and they have their mind right and everything. Like,
So I mean, gentleman sport is in a posh sport, if you will. Like it's not. Like there's a lot of swearing that goes into like the press conference and stuff. There's a lot of bash talking. Like you won't ever find that in tennis. Like you'll find bash talking, but not like that. Like not that kind of level, you know?
That's
And in
what gets
tennis, you can't swear on the court and stuff. Like
that's why tennis rating is going down. The
well,
UFC
tennis
rating
rating going down more so, it's a different conversation. I think tennis rating going down is because of how long form the sport is. It's not necessarily the sport itself.
Yeah.
So, and like,
I
look,
gotta
UFC is what? How many rounds? How many minutes? Right? Like, usually 3 rounds. How many minutes? Like 5 minutes, right? Each
five
round.
each round. Yeah, 15
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, so like, and then the bigger fights, like the co and the main, are 5 rounds, 5 minutes each. So like, it's very short. Whereas tennis can go up to upwards of 3 hours. Nobody has a time to watch 3 hours anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a different lifestyle now.
Also, people don't relate like that. Like it
Yeah, also
when
that too. Like,
when
not everyone plays tennis or has access to tennis courts.
when you watch UFC, whether you understand fighting or not, you literally can feel the person fighting for his life.
Yeah.
In tennis, it's just like a ball falls out of the court. Okay, sure, yeah,
Mhm.
whatever, you know.
How did you get into boxing?
This is back in the day.
You're not that old, Carino.
So in the in middle school, which is grade 7 to 9, you go to a separate school. And for me, I went to a separate school in a different city. And it's a private school. And the problem with the private school is that in public school, they have a record of you. So when you go to public school and you behave bad and then you get kicked out, the other public schools know that you're a bad kid, so they don't take you in.
Hmm.
So all the bad kids went to the private school because they
You
don't.
were a bad kid?
I wasn't, but I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
saying. I'm just saying, like with bad kids, the only option you have is to find a private school because the
Oh,
public
okay.
schools have your record. So my private school had a lot of bad kids.
I see. But why did you want to go to a school then that had a lot of bad kids?
Well, I don't know. Nobody knows. Like,
Oh, okay.
they advertise and market. It's just like it's like yeah, just like any university here or high school here. How would you find out if a school is good? Like there's almost very limited ways.
Yeah.
A lot of university like based on the brochure, based on their website, and it seems all grand and good. And
Yeah.
then you go to the university, it's not what you thought, but then what are you gonna do? You gotta state it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's a lot of I don't know what you call it, like bowling, not bowling, I don't know, but like let's say just
Religious
bowling
fights?
to simplify. Just a
Okay.
lot of like there's bowling around. I wasn't particularly bullied. I was bullied here and there, throughout my life.
Yeah,
But
gotta keep it real, huh?
yeah, but I wasn't like most of it wasn't directed at me.
Okay.
But living in an environment like that, it's like even if it doesn't happen to you, it's still if you kind of you're insecure, you're like, if this were to happen to me, I couldn't deal with it, then it's like a constant stress on
Mm.
it's kind of like I don't know if people go to war. Obviously, it's not nearly to this extent, but let's say people go to war and they see their friends got killed or something in front of them, then they like, even though nothing happened to them physically, but they still get stressed out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Type of thing. So then I was just like, there's a constant like looming stress over like this could happen to anybody type of thing. anytime. Like there's nothing I can do about it. I was going to the school in a different city. None of my family was around. Nobody would be able to help me. So I wanted to learn something to defend myself.
Yeah.
And then also, I'm a pretty extreme person. I'm like, if I'm
You
gonna
think I've always ever mentioned that, like you're extremely extreme, like
extremely
extreme.
extreme, huh?
Yeah, just you're just extreme.
Yeah. So,
Like extreme in the way, like I don't think people understand. Like extreme in the way, like with your self-discipline, with how um like white and black you are. You, like there's no really gray, like, you know, it depends type thing. There is in your thinking, but not in how you do things. Like if you say you're going to be there at what time, like you're going to be there sharp on the dot kind of thing, like you're not going to be, I'll be there around this time. Like no, it's like this time and then that's it. Anyways,
yeah, yeah. I always,
and
I,
you'll like follow through with all of like whatever you say, it'll be followed through. Like there's no, you do not waver on your word. Like you're an honorable human being.
yeah, I don't like to pussyfoot around, you know.
No, not at
Like,
all.
like, what is it? Like, are you gonna work out or you're not gonna work out? You know, like,
Yeah.
and also, I also held the view. This this might do this another episode, but I just
Mhm.
briefly mention is I think it has something to do with the people you look up to when you're a kid, like and what how you want to live and what type of person you want to become.
Yeah.
It's, when I was a kid, the people I look up to, whether fictional or not fictional, are people who went through a tough time and they did a lot of hard things like other people couldn't do. They pull through and then they become a hero or something.
Hmm.
So I always held the view that to be better than other people, you have to do things that are harder than other people.
Yeah.
This is like a kind of common theme throughout my life too. I always find the hardest thing to do. Like in like in sport, I find the hardest thing I could find, which at the time was boxing.
Hmm.
And then later on, you know, in my life, when I try to find a job, I try to find the hardest job I could find, all of that. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I want to get. Also, I was kind of unhealthy. I've always been a big video game fan. I was play video games, and went to private school. Not much freedom either. You just sit there all day and go to classes. And because of that, I didn't have much appetite and I didn't eat good. So it was just like overall unhealthy. So I was like, what can I find that can help me to defend myself and get me to become more fit? And my conclusion was some type of fighting, you know, thing. And you know, in China, martial arts, quote unquote, kung fu is big,
Oh
but
my
then
gosh.
because of all the TV shows I watch in China, they exaggerated, like, you know, this guy push out his hand and
Yeah,
then
like Bruce
dragon
Lee.
dragon flies out and hit the other
Yeah.
guy. So I always feel like all the kung fu are fake. Like I need to learn some type of Western like fighting, like a raw. I can see street punching or kicking or something.
Yeah.
And at the time, UFC wasn't really. I don't know if it even existed, but it definitely wasn't like known in China. So the closest thing was boxing. And in China, it's very different than here. Here, you have your private clubs, and then anybody can join, and then you just learn boxing, and then you compete, and then you go to Olympics and all these things. In China, it's a it's a centralized place. There's a building that's a sports school, and they collect all the kids from the rural area in China in the villages because those kids don't have any options and they don't have they couldn't afford to go to elementary school even. So they take those kids out and put them in the sports camp, and that's all they do all day. They just do sports, and then later on they get developed into athletes and go to Olympics. Like in a way, like you couldn't contribute to the country intellectually. Now you contribute to the country, like with your body type of thing.
Yeah. Whoa, that's so interesting.
It's kind of like being drafted to go to war, go to the military type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah. So I went there with a bunch of kids like that. It's a very interesting experience. Oh, by the way, I wasn't supposed to be able to get into school like that. Like only people who get drafted, they have to live there and train 2 times a day. They train there. Like I was kind of doing it as a hobby. I wasn't supposed to be able to get in, but then we maneuver around with our networking, and I got in just in the summer. Yeah, just trained on and off. I go to school, and then in summer, I come back to my own city and I go train. But I didn't learn much because the coach trained the athletes to earn like medals and whatever that reflects good on the coach.
Yeah.
And that's what they drive for. And the coach knows that I won't compete for him. So like he didn't care. Like I had to stand in front of the mirror in one stance. I stood there for a month just doing this, just standing still. Like I didn't do much. Like, yeah. What they say is like, oh, get your fundamental right. And I don't know if you've seen Kung Fu movies, but in Kung Fu movies, they always do this like horse stance. Like they kind of like squat and then they just like stay there for years to get their stance right. It's sort of like that type of feeling.
Okay.
It's not as severe. Yeah, and then I came over to Canada and I always enjoyed it. I think boxing was fun actually. And then I came to Canada, I went to school. After school, I dislike school a lot. So I was just thinking, what can I do that doesn't involve school? And then my answer was maybe become a professional boxer. Because
So you took this seriously?
What?
You took like your pursuit to becoming a professional boxer seriously?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure still, but then I tried my best to train and stuff. Like because my interest in it, just like how you like tennis now, you watch all the tennis and then you watch their interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, like before I decided to become a professional boxer, I was interested in it. So I watched a lot of Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, all the old school boxers, boxing matches, and then I watched their interviews, and I become like I kind of idolized them, and I was like, oh, this is so cool! Like there's nothing cooler or more respectable thing you can do in the world than being a world champion in boxing. That's how I felt at the time, because I watched all of this Muhammad Ali do crazy things. Even Floyd Mayweather, it's just like they were on top of the world.
Yeah.
And then I was like, like people do business and study and make money. That's lame. Like it's so boring. Like being a world champion in boxing, such a glorious thing, is so much better than having money and any of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I wanted to become boxer, and also I was thinking I pursue being professional boxer. Even if I failed, at least I will end up with healthy body. If I'm competing on the international level, I'm like one of the healthiest, strongest person in the world. Even if I don't make any money, I'm still end up with good health. Versus a lot of these business people, they make a lot of money, but they don't have good health. So what's money gonna do?
Yeah.
So I just thought, I don't know, maybe I was delusional, but just at the time, this seemed like an all around good option. Like there's no downside. So I pursued boxing. And yeah, and then I was watching a lot of boxing matches at that time because I was like, oh, I got to pay attention to what other people are doing so I can learn from them. And maybe I'm fighting them one day, so watching all of that. And then that's when UFC was getting a little more popular. So just some nights, people who I watched boxing with, they're like, oh, maybe watch UFC. I never was interested in UFC. But then I was like, oh, why not? Whatever, the same thing. And I watched, I think the first memorable fight I remember was John Jones. Is like the way he fights, how fluent he is like really left an impression. It's interesting. But for the most part, when I watch other UFC fighters, I didn't like it because at the time, UFC wasn't really like as professional as now. It's a lot of like street fighters and like you said, like white people with tattoos and like older people. And,
well, I didn't say that.
Whoa. Yeah, that's what I saw. Like when I see just random UFC fighters, I don't know who they are. They're just like white people with blonde hair, green hair, mohawk and tattoo, and they're fighting. They're just swinging. There's no skill.
Yeah. At
the time, most of the good boxers I know in person, they kind of look down on UFC. They're like, they don't even know how to fight. The UFC is for street fighters, like for people who don't know how to fight.
Yeah, which is where Jorge Masvidal came up from too, right? Like, he talked about this.
Yeah. So then over time, UFC fighters evolve and they became better and better. And then big personalities came up like Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor. In the beginning,
I wasn't even watching Ronda Rousey back then.
Yeah. At the moment, I wasn't big on their fighting. I was like, they don't know how to fight. But then they're way more entertaining than boxers. So I started watching them. And then later on, when Conor McGregor was at his peak, he was doing some crazy things. He was knocking people out with one punch. He was like, he's like so fluent in his movements. I was like, oh, like this sport evolved. Now maybe they're doing something special. So that's when I got into it a little more. But because it was like wrestling heavy still, I don't like to watch anybody else, but like the heavy strikers like Conor McGregor and John Jones, people who like punch and kick, because that's what I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a way later on, I got into jiu-jitsu. I took some classes and like the experience you said, you get choked out and you liked it. Yeah. I relate. It's like, it's such a, I don't know, interesting feeling that it's like, even though you're the person who getting choked out, you feel like you discover some secret.
Yeah, that's why I said it's like messed up, because like those who didn't go through it, like really don't understand what I mean.
Yes. Like I came into jiu-jitsu with the thinking that I'm stronger than most people. I know how to punch, and things like that. And like these jiu-jitsu people never been punched in the face. If we got into a fight, I can still beat them even if I don't know jiu-jitsu. But then I roll with the people a few times. I was like, whoa, like if they want to, they want to choke me out, there's like literally nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Because it's how, like, people don't understand if they never try this. When you roll with someone who knows jiu-jitsu well, the helpless feeling.
It's over. Like your life is over.
Yeah, like whether you punch, even if you know nothing about fighting, if you're told to punch a heavy bag, you can apply some force. But when you're on the ground and somebody knows how to manipulate your joints, your,
Oh man.
you know, your neck, your body, they put you in certain position, they choke your neck. Like you wouldn't even be able, even if you're the strongest man in the world, you have nowhere to apply that force.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. What really messed me up was with someone, like I'm pretty small to begin with, but with someone else who's my, weight and height choking me out like it's like not a problem. That's when I had a problem. I'm like, okay, like this is not, fun and games anymore. This is like a real thing. Or if like a kid was to choke me out, that's messed up. Like I could not let that happen.
yeah. I roll with girls who are like, I don't know, 20 pounds lighter than me. They'd be choking
Yeah.
me out. I was like,
Yeah, I saw that too. Like when a big guy and a
yeah.
girl was rolling, I was like, whoa. And then they would explain, like, oh, this is uncomfortable for that person, or, this person's really in trouble now when this happens. I'm like, whoa, like it literally doesn't matter what like one size is, which intrigued me more. Like that was the whole thing, is like having some self-defense and being smaller than everyone else, because I've only ever gotten those comments like, oh, you're so small. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like there's always something someone can say about my physique or height that hinders me from moving forward in a sport.
Yeah, it's a very, like, it's a humbling but empowering feeling at the same time.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so
it's,
different.
it's like humbling that, oh, like, I'm not like strong, or like I'm not that effective like I thought I was. Like all these people can choke me out. But also it's empowering because it's like, whoa, I just discovered something. I can apply my body in the same way. And it's like having superpowers against other people who don't know this thing. There's nothing they can do. They're completely helpless
Yeah.
against you if you learn the skill.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. So ever since then, I just enjoyed all the high level UFC fights because it kind of happened at the same time when UFC fighting was getting to a high enough level that even striking was impressing me. It was
Mm-hmm.
impressive, like for me, and then I can understand the wrestling part a lot better too. So like all the high level fights are entertaining for me, and also there's a time when more and more characters were popping up. Like back in the day, they were kind of boring. But now it's like there's Jorge Masvidal, the Israel Adesanya, there's like Francis Ngannou, there's like one after another. Even the lighter division, there's a one point
Brandon Moreno.
Dana White was gonna get rid of the entire division. He was like, nobody watches these lighter guys. But now there's Brandon Moreno, there's all of these lighter guys are pretty entertaining too.
Yeah.
So that's my long story of how I got into UFC.
Did it change
Mhm.
how you felt though? Like knowing jiu-jitsu then compared to boxing?
What do you mean?
Like,
Change?
did you feel different having a separate tool belt other than boxing? Because I'm sure like you feel a certain way with knowing boxing, but like knowing jiu-jitsu on top of that, like did you feel like, oh, I'm a sharper sword than anyone else because I know all these tools?
No, no, no. Just
No.
like you, I'm a white belt,
No,
basic
I
white
know, but
belt.
like,
Like,
okay.
if anything, that makes me more uh, like scared, not scared, but like more aware the danger of wrestling in the streets.
Yeah.
Like without knowing jujitsu, I'll probably be like, if anything goes on, just punch them in the face. And now I'm like, even if they don't know wrestling at all, if they're just 250 pounds and they just like hug me and take me down, there's nothing I can do because knowing a little bit jujitsu, I know how much more jujitsu that I don't know. So it makes me more like humble in a way.
Yeah. Well, for me, like one thing that made it so different was when you're like the real nerds who practice jiu-jitsu day in and day out. They're the most humble people. You wouldn't even know, like you wouldn't even have an inkling that they're into jiu-jitsu, which I learned is the case. There's so many people who are so humble, like you would never think that they would do jiu-jitsu or have any sort of ego, and they're the best ones. Like they're all the black belts that, don't, like, it's so opposite. Like the loudest people in the room are the people who really don't know much about the sport, and
Yeah.
those who practice and who are experts in the field are those who are the most quiet about it. It's so
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Because the helpless feeling you and I describe, all of them black belts have felt.
Yeah.
And so they can both understand, like they have sympathy for you, and also they understand that there's always someone else that can make them feel helpless, so they're not the top too. So then they like, you got to remain humble no matter how good you are. Everybody gets submitted someday,
Yeah.
so it
And
humbles you real quick.
really quick, yeah, and like it gives me like a greater respect to the people in the sport and the people practicing the sport, because it's so opposite in other sports. Like the big jocks and like football and basketball and all these things, it's so opposite. It's like so refreshing to see like the experts be nice and quiet and like in their corner and put their head down in the books, trying to learn something, then trying to one up each other. Like in the gym, for example, just power lifters or weightlifters always trying to one up each other. And I'm like, to me, that's more of a turnoff now than the people who are just like head and like nose in the books type of people. So I've changed my perspective so greatly because of UFC and because of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, there's one of the top best UFC trainers called Faraz Zahabi. He's like, he trains every day and he's like a very good fighter. And he said, when I go out, I try my best to avoid fighting. I'm nice to everybody. I try my best to avoid fighting. And you can always tell by the way they talk who's never fought in their life before. He was like, I
Yeah.
encounter people, they're like talking like, you want to fight? Like he was
Yeah.
like, in my mind, I'm thinking, this guy don't understand violence. This guy's never seen, like never been punched like hard in his life. He doesn't understand, like this could go like very, very badly that he couldn't even like comprehend.
Yeah. And to compare to what I know growing up now, all the big guys like who talk a big game, to me, they're all fraudsters now. I'm like, you guys don't even know the half of fighting. Like, don't even.
Oh yeah, if you look at all the like perfect NBA basketball players, they got into fights or whatever, like it looks comical.
Yeah. Like literally now, just like thinking back about all like the guys I grew up with always trying to fight and stuff. I'm like, you guys don't know. And like there's some guys who have sure like have classes a few times and then that's it. And they think they're hot shot because they've taken a few classes. I'm like, no, like, wow. These guys I grew up with, kind of silly.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I felt like UFC, jiu-jitsu, like jiu-jitsu is life. And it's like you see that too, like, and it's so cool to see such an innovative sport too, because when someone thinks out of the box and if it works, it works, and like other people want to learn from them too. So
And the coolest thing about jiu-jitsu is that you are able to go all out. You can give it completely your all without hurting your training partners. This
yeah.
is like a unique to jiu-jitsu. Like in boxing, like when training, you gotta be careful. You couldn't test your limits. You might knock out your partner and permanently damage their brain, or they could knock you out. That's the problem. But in jiu-jitsu, you go all out, you could kill them in a choke, but then they can tap and then you can go again. Like
Yeah.
this level of like limit testing, you can push all the way down to killing your partner and then restart without damaging their body. It's like it's magical. It's
Yeah.
also it teaches you a lot of good qualities, like like discipline, and also helps you to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations and
So fast.
being able to still think while other people are trying to kill you, like literally choking on your neck, trying to stop your air from going into your brain. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you still gotta, if you just get emotional and just apply force, you're gonna black out.
Yeah.
So you still gotta remain calm, think like carefully what I'm supposed to do, be aware of where your body is and all of that. So it's a very, very good sport.
Yeah. That's why I say jujitsu is life, because it's like translates so much into life. And just like the emotions part of it plays a big role in how you're going to move after. So, anyways,
Also, another
having,
good thing, just real quick,
yes.
another very good thing about jiu-jitsu is it's a pretty defensive sport. So
Yeah.
if you're this is not 100%, but most of the times if your kids are, I don't know, football player or a boxer or somebody, they're gonna feel like they can bully other kids around and they can attack. Whereas if your kids, are very good at jiu-jitsu, it's usually like they try to step back and they try to defend themselves, and they their techniques are applied when they are taken down, and like it's a more defensive sport. Like it's less of being a dick, like a bully mentality. Like
Yeah.
so that's why I think it's a all around better sport for kids than most other sports too.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything. And I'm so glad that I tried jujitsu. I was forced into jujitsu, all in the good ways. So,
Nobody force you.
no, I was pretty cornered. Okay. Like you set it up in a way that I would be so silly if I didn't try it. And
You could have
you
tapped
motivated
any
me.
second.
I did tap. I learned. So I thought tapping was good, tap out. There's a brand called Tap Out. That is wrong. Like, you don't want to tap out. Whoever made that brand, like, no, it's not good to tap out. You don't want to tap out. Anyways, having said all of that, I hope that, someone took something good away from this conversation. Don't be normal, be yourself. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.